Hi, Reader Research Girls have conducted a research between Wichita State University's marketing research class and the Kansas State Parks to meet the goals of identifying what type of visitor is most profitable to the parks and what consumer segment should Kansas State Parks be targeting to maximize its revenue. To operate a business, it is very important to efficiently generate revenue, and in order to do so, a business must know its segmentation, targeting, and positioning. In the state of Kansas, there are a total of 28 state parks, including Cedar Bluff, Cheney, Clinton, Crawford, Cross Timbers, Eisenhower, El Dorado, Elk City, Fall River, Flint Hills Trail, Glen Elder, Hillsdale, Historic Lake Scott, Canopolis, Kaw River, Little Jerusalem, Lovewell, Mead, Milford, Mushroom Rock, Perry, Pomona, Perry Dock, Perry Spirit Trail, Sand Hills, Turtle Creek, Webster, and Wilson. Some of the Kansas state parks also rank in the top 1% nationally for scenic beauty. The Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism relies entirely on park entrance fees, campsite and cabin rental fees, and marina concessions to fund the operation, maintenance, and repairs of the state parks. Unfortunately, in June of 2019, many of Kansas state parks were devastated by massive flooding, causing the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism to lose millions of dollars due to park closures, property damage, and washout park roads. Over half of the revenue from the previous year was lost due to not only the flooding, but also lost entrance and campsite fees, rentals, concessions, and refunds. To meet Kansas tourism's marketing goal of increasing visitor spending, the Kansas State Parks must know its consumers. Studies show that at least two-thirds of all Kansans utilize state parks in some capacity to not only recover from the tremendous loss of income, but also generate high revenue. The Kansas State Parks could use this study to identify what type of visitor is most profitable to the parks and what consumer segment the Kansas State Parks should be targeting to maximize its revenue.
So, moving on from the research question that we developed as a team, we wanted to touch a bit on the variables that we came up from the question. The first one being, which of the first best describes your primary reason for visiting this Kansas State Park? So, this is an open ended question, and it requires a numeric answer, and it involves ordinal data. So, what we did was we gave the people taking the survey 9 different options of activities to choose from that they participated in. And then the next variable that we came up with was an open-ended question involving ratio data. And we asked the people taking the survey to respond with the amount of money they spent while at the park. And then the third and final variable that we came up with can be analyzed through a prompt. We asked the people taking the survey to type in a written answer regarding to the amount of people that they visited the park with. So this required a numeric response. And so from those variables that we came up with as a team, we developed 2 hypotheses. The first one being a bivariate hypothesis, which was park visitors whose primary activity was family time spent on average the most amount of money in the local area of the state park. And then the univariate hypothesis that we came up with was the average group size that visited the park is less than 4 people.
For our survey method and descriptive statistics, our target population was all visitors of the Kansas State Parks. We conducted an online survey sent via email to a list of email addresses who had visited the state parks. In total, we had 5,879 survey recipients. We had 4,700 72 valid responses, including partial data. 37% were confirmed male, 34% were confirmed women. On average, the age was 53. The average number of nights spent was 4. And the 3 most visited parks was, first we had Hillsdale Park with 402 participants. Then we had Wilson Park with 394 participants, and El Dorado Park with 385 participants.
Okay, so next we took our tests. So our first test was our bivariate test, and that was for our hypothesis stating that park visitors whose primary activity was family time spent on average the most amount of money in the local area of the state park. So this is the conclusion of our test that we ran. And our results of our test, we had 3,470 responses to the questions of interest for the test. And those were, which of the following best describes your primary reason for visiting this Kansas State Park? And what was the amount spent in the local area? The average amount the visitors whose primary activity was family time spent is $35.76, while the average amount that all the other visitors spent was $23.38. The p-value from this test was 0.177. So even though the average was more, since the number was not significant, we conclude that visitors whose primary activity was family time did not spend significantly more than the other visitors. Our next test was our univariate test. And that was for our hypothesis of how many people, or the hypothesis that the average group size visited the park was less than 4 people. For our results, we had 4,516 responses to our question of interest. Our question of interest was how many people, including yourself, were in your immediate group on this trip. We concluded that the average group size was 3.7, and the p-value of this test was 3.4 e to the negative 24. Therefore, this number is significant, and our hypothesis is correct that the average group size of visitors was less than 4 people.
Okay, we ran an additional correlation test to compare the group size and the amount spent in the local area. There were 3,471 respondents that answered our questions of interest. The questions of interest are, how many people, including yourself, were in your immediate group on this trip, and the amount spent in the local area within 40 miles of the park. Our hypothesis is that as a group size goes up, the amount spent on local expenses goes up. This analysis was completed using a correlation test. The correlation of this test is 0.038. To conclude, as a group size goes up, the amount spent on local expenses goes up, and this effect is relatively small.
Okay, so in conclusion, we have learned through our test that Kansas State Parks shouldn't focus a majority of their marketing on families. Park visitors whose primary activity was family time did spend more on average compared to other visitors, but not enough to be significant. We also learned that the average group size is less than 4 people. We believe that families are not the target population for Kansas State Parks. In order to increase the profits, they should focus their marketing on other types of visitors. So who should Kansas State Parks focus their marketing on? We decided to test correlation between group size and the amount spent in the local area. We can conclude that as group size goes up, so does the amount spent on expenses in the local area. Through this, though this is a relatively small correlation, it gives an idea of where they should focus on marketing efforts. This survey has plenty of limitations. The survey is not the best for recording data in real time. This is because surveys record data at a single point in time, and it is difficult to measure changes in the population unless 2 surveys or more are done at different points in time. The next limitation we have is in this survey is that these surveys usually cannot show strong enough evidence of any cause and effect. This topic will need some further research. We suggest that there should be some research conducted on what kinds of individuals visit these parks. We would have liked to know if the visitors have any related hobbies outside of the parks that could bring in more revenue. This survey does have issues with sampling error because this type of error always occurs in a sample. And this survey also has a big issue with non-response error because a handful of people did not respond to the survey.